The European Union, the ambitious project of 27 countries trying to get along, share stuff and not start wars anymore. About 448 million people call it home, making it one of the world's biggest economic clubs with a GDP of around $18 trillion. Basically lots of cheese, cars and complicated trade agreements. Together, the EU has built a giant single market where people, money, croissants and awkward handshakes can flow freely. So far, about 20 of the countries share a common currency, the euro. It's got big dreams too, saving the planet with green policies, leading in tech and staying relevant next to global giants like the US and China.
It has its family drama too, like Brexit a few years ago, or Hungary, which seems to play a different game on a different team. Nonetheless, it is a unique political project which gave Europeans decades of stability, peace and welfare. Its heart beats here in Brussels, a very special place, a capital of politics, business and connections with its 27 member states, a melting pot of cultures and languages operating through almost constant crisis. With new global threats and Euroscepticism growing, Europe looks at the word security. Will the Union withstand the test? There's no better place to ask this question than here in Brussels. Wars, both physical and hybrid, weakening alliances, immigration, growing nationalism. Sounds like a major stress test for the European Union, and this is well understood here at the European Parliament. The majority of Europeans clearly support the EU, in fact in record numbers according to a recent survey. But at the same time, people are becoming ever more afraid of the turbulence inside and outside of the European Union. It's not time for talk. It's wartime. The Polish presidency, which is just concluding, made security the most important issue for European politics.
The greatest challenges for European Union leaders in 2025 resemble a chess game played on many boards at once. There's a lack of a unified strategy towards Washington, and US President Trump eagerly exploits differences within the EU.
We're going to tell those countries, like those represented by the European Union, that, that game is up. Sorry.
He demands higher defense spending, threatens tariffs, and expects increased purchases of gas and weaponry. The escalation of Iran-Israel conflict threatens to engulf the entire region in war and destabilize global markets.
Israel aggression on Iran cannot and must not be justified by any legal or moral standards.
It should be done right now, immediately.
The EU faces a defining moment with Ukraine, whose fate determines the security of the entire continent.
We have to confront those who treat human life as worthless, just as we defend our own safety. This fight is not limited to Europe. It matters in every region nearby.
Financial, military and political support for Kiev is not just an act of solidarity. It's strategic investment in European stability and peace.
Russia's goal is not peace, it is to impose the rule of might.
Russian aggression against Ukraine exposes a wider battlefield. Across Europe, far-right and populist movements are gaining ground, fueled by the Kremlin's disinformation and hybrid tactics targeting minds, media and democratic institutions. Europe now stands at a crossroads, with challenges from its allies, adversaries and within its own ranks. The choice made in 2025 may define its course for decades. Will the Union choose reform, resilience and unity, or allow itself to fracture Under the weight of crises, the game is on and the clock is ticking.
And for the last 6 months, the game has been led by the Poles. Now they are handing over to the Danish team. And we have our first guests, politicians from both Poland and Denmark. It's Andrzej Halicki, member of the European Parliament and co-chair of the European People's Party. Welcome to the programme. And Stine Bosse, also a member of the European Parliament, Renew Europe group with extensive experience in business previously. Welcome to both of you. And it sounds natural to start by asking, how did the Polish presidency change the European Union in the last half a year, especially in terms of security, which was your manifesto?
The whole Europe has been changed. But I think that the Polish presidency, I'm the last person who should say is it good, active or not. But I'm satisfied that the Polish priority number one, which was raised 6 months ago, security Europe. Now it's not only a slogan, because you said at the very beginning in the introduction that it is not time to talk, it is time to act. And
but do you have a feeling you really delivered? I'm asking this because a majority of Europeans, 66% of the Europeans, want to see European Union play a greater role in protecting them against crisis. Did you deliver on that?
Yes, I'm sure, because, well, if we are talking about security, this is not only the physical security. We have war on our continent. We have seen Russia's attack on Ukraine. This is regular war we have from 2022. But we have also very tough situation globally. So the conflict
getting worse every day, talking about
but this is also security on energy. We had energy crisis, and we had to deliver, well, some kind of a protection. So we are now independent from Russia, but also we have to control the prices. The people are afraid of prices. This is also security on health, a completely new issue. We delivered also the pharmaceutical pact, which is something completely new. But during the pandemic time, also support for the government.
But you know, but the biggest, the major achievement you would like to share with us today
during the presidency,
would be what? During your presidency, yes.
During the presidency, for sure, implementation of SAFE program. This is the military support of military business. So if you can imagine that 6 months ago it was only a slogan, and now the tools and implementation of the plan, which is 150 billion euro. It's a lot of money. And dedicated especially to the military business, also on the East, also for our countryside, I think it's a great achievement. But it's not only the only program, because ReArm-EU, it's also additional one. But on the security, we have to mention Eastern Shield, which was written to the strategic plans, European plans, not only Polish governmental program, and the Baltic Line, the external borders protection, also supported by EU budget. It was not not any euro spent before because of the, you know, sometimes artificial discussion. We are on the budget committee working together with Stine. We have this money in the budget now.
Let me ask Stine
absolutely completely new situation.
Right. So are you happy with this list of achievements of the Polish presidency? Because you're taking over, so you have to either build on that or come up with your own ideas for your half a year in the Council.
No, I think it's worth mentioning, and this is the beauty of the way that things are conducted. There is a bigger picture, there is a strategy, and everybody joins in during the presidency and sort of contributes to the leadership and to achieving a lot of things. And I think we have to mention that there was a slight pause before the Polish presidency, because it was a difficult period with Hungary in the seat. And now we are very pleased. My government see a very sort of smooth transition. There's been a lot of cooperation with the Polish government. So I see this as a very positive period, and where we hopefully can achieve a lot together.
Okay, can I just touch on this point, because you mentioned Hungary, and we know that we do have a problem from time to time, that's a euphemism, with Hungary and their decisions. Do you have an idea how to deal with that problem, with the problem of vetoing, with the problem of sort of Hungary playing a different game on a different team?
If I had that recipe, I wouldn't be standing here probably. I would be working in another area. But I would say, you know, we can't have a situation where we all have to rely on the fact that Mr. Orban needs to go to the toilet from time to time. We need to find solutions where we can actually adapt and go further. In many areas, including the defense area, including the area of the next extension of Europe.
Are there any particular concrete ideas how to do it?
I think there are concrete ideas, and I think there are more than one. And I think mainly it is a question also of, you know, getting Orban on board and getting the, perhaps even more so, the
Not necessarily in the toilet.
Not in the toilet, but getting him on board and getting the people of Hungary on board.
How to do it? We've been trying to do it for years.
But let me give you an example.
Right.
I remember when we did the extension where it was Poland and Hungary that were at stake. I remember the question marks in my own country. This is going to be horrible. There were a lot of farmers very worried. It's going to be a lot of workforce there. It's be overwhelming and blah, 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 all this. I was never in that position. I always saw the fact of what is the
beauty of the European Union.
That is that we are building big things together.
Okay, so Mr. Orban or growing populism, would you both consider it as part of the beauty of the European Union?
No, not the growing populism. The growing populism, we have to fight together, but we cannot fight it without engaging with the people.
Right.
I mean, take Orban aside, let him stay in the toilet for a while, and let's engage with the people and make sure that we together understand their worry points. And some of it is pricing. Some of it is, you know, it's overwhelming to see a lot of farming products and so on coming from potentially Ukraine.
Okay.
To understand the dynamics.
Right. Populism, one of the most dangerous.
Yeah, but I would like to continue because I fully agree with Stine. I think that, especially in Poland, we had also presidential elections like that, and the younger generation supported radical left, radical right, many voters from them.
Sort of extreme sides.
But doesn't mean that they are anti-European. I don't feel so. They would like to, first of all, they are Europeans because they don't know the previous times.
Because there's an interesting paradox, not only probably referring to young people in Poland, but people just across all spectra. They trust the European Union. We see that in the polls, but they don't trust politicians. That's a bad news for you.
Not exactly. It's obvious that they would like to live in Europe, but the question is, what kind of Europe they would like to have with the regulations or over-regulation, with the limits, the bans and so on. No, if they are using cars, they would like to choose what kind of car they would like to use. And this is the free choice. And this is the Europe we would like to have.
Offer to
I think that this is the biggest question we are facing.
And there is a big responsibility on all politicians, but perhaps even more so on parliamentarians here in Brussels, namely to make sure that the politicians in the nations, and this was a big issue in Denmark for some years back, now it's gone, but any politician in the nation would always say, if something went wrong, it's because of Brussels. And if something was good, it's me, it's my idea. And that was always wrong. It was always a blend.
It might be wrong, but it works.
It works, but that's where we come into play. That's where we have to be the ones that are, you know, outspoken and vocal and say, this is actually what is happening in Brussels. These are the good things that we're doing together, and these are the more difficult areas where we have to be, you know, solidarity with each other and show that we can actually do more together.
To what extent are you worried about the growth of radicalism then? We mentioned populism, but I'm talking about political radicalism, which is a fact, really, in all countries, including Denmark, including Poland, including other countries.
Because we have to change our common policy on many areas. And this is also a part of Polish presidency. Because if you are talking about the real problem with the number of migrants and illegal migration, we have to implement the pact, but the pact has to work. So we have to have money, the external borders protection, control of the visas, exchange of data, Eurodata should be implemented, Frontex should be supported. That's good that we have a new budget for Frontex, blocked several years. Why? Because without this control and without the returns directive we are calling, so without possibility send them back, we will be not efficient in, in this artificial, several pages of the pact. So we have to have the tools, real tools.
Okay. What are you most disappointed with when it comes to Polish presidency? What are you the most disappointed with? What are you not happy about?
Still the problem of the, we are calling green policy, because, well, the cost is very high. And I think that rational policy is needed now.
Right.
So we have to revise the goals. We have to revise the
Do we have to put it on hold?
We are calling now clean industrial policy. This is some kind of a revision. Right. So, of course, European business has to be more competitive, but also we have to think about the future. So if the Fit for 55 is ambitious goal,
or too ambitious?
No, it's achievable. In 2030, we have to think what to do next, not to be too ambitious, because then we will kill our business, our economy, and it will be suicide.
Yeah. I think here, you might find a slight difference, political difference, but I just want to encourage...
Between Poland and Denmark, between the presidencies?
No, between Mr. Halicki and myself.
Okay.
But that is fair enough. We are politicians. But look, Denmark will play a very clear and significant role regarding the outer borders. And there we are completely aligned.
Yes, but because we're close to the Russian border, all of us.
All of us.
Have a look at Spain. Have a look at the other...
No, but that is regarding illegal migration. This is, for me, really something that we should be a bit embarrassed about. We should, for many years back, we should have secured the outer borders. And here we're not talking about refugees. Here we're talking about illegal migrants. And this will happen, I'm sure, much tougher during the Danish presidency. There is a clear intention. But
would that be a priority? Would that be a number one thing?
It is.
So Danish presidency will be about immigration, yes?
It will
about
be
immigrants.
About security, including immigration.
Did the Polish side not do enough in terms of immigration?
I don't want to be a judge of that. I just want to say...
But I'm asking you to judge it.
I think we've come away, and I do think it is time that we now together again step up and do even more. And then I just wanted to add on the green transition. That's why I think it will be very difficult and very strange. Not that we shouldn't simplify. Oh yes, let's make it a lot easier for businesses, but we need to keep the goal in sight, and that's also what I heard you saying. We need to make sure, and that will be also a priority for the Danish government, not to slack on the goals on climate, because this is also part of our security. We need to get out of the grip of either Russia or Middle East.
Well, the program that we probably mentioned, but this name didn't appear, Readiness 2030. What should we be ready for in 2030, in 5 years and 4.5 years?
We should be much more ready regarding the big grids, where we are much better connected for electricity. We should be much further in also energy, in developing also nuclear power. And we should also make sure that...
4.5 years.
4.5 years, but we don't have a lot of time. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
We don't have a lot of time. We do not need... Look at a map. We are squeezed between Russia and Middle East. And that is not a good position to be in, especially not when we have the administration in the US as we see today.
That's the Danish perspective. What should we be ready for?
I think that we are thinking in similar dimension. That's good, because we have the similar feeling, I think, understanding also. For the problems, we are both Baltic states, so we have also think about security on Baltic, the Shadow Fleet, for instance. This is something which is also important to do. But coming back to the general point, well, I feel that this security policy on several areas will be continued, so it will be smooth, I would say, following the
with a few improvements on immigration, as we have just heard.
We are using same colors. We are red, we are white, we are Danish dynamite. I remember the Danish fans, and we are also using same colors in stadiums.
That's a football saying.
But not joking, I think we are living in very serious times. And well, this tough situation means that the coordination, the activity, and very, how to say, strong consequence is needed. So continuation has to be done.
I thought you wanted to say something just as a point of conclusion, and then
I just want to echo the fact that we are really living in very, very serious times. And this is the time for unity. This is a time for decision. This is a time for more bold decisions. And it's a time where we should back each other. And we should do this not for our generation, I'm sorry, but for the young people in Europe.
Exactly.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you. Andrzej Halicki and Stine Bosse, thanks for joining us on Capital Questions. Well, security is one of the most pressing issues connected with the presidency and the transition of power in the Council. Time to talk a bit more about the future of the European Union with our experts. But before we go into that part, we ask the people in the streets of Brussels what they expect from the EU.
I would prefer the European Union to be like a union, more, it's strange to say, but patriotic in a European way.
I have a long list, but yeah, I would expect much more action and leadership.
We need to guarantee our food safety principles, and I think that is today is too much. Let me say, politician.
As we're part of the European Union, we should have a stronger stand on the matters that are currently ongoing. And if we are a part of it, then let's make a decision and let's make it count. Let's just not be passive and making like politically correct statements that are safeguarding our electorate in, let's say, ensuring that we continue to have the votes, but then nothing is happening.
For now, we really need the European Union to protect the citizens and protect our environment. This is the first major thing for me that I'm expecting for the UE.
It's a starting block, isn't it? If you can find something that you can genuinely agree with the principles of like morality and just trying to keep the peace and just try and work together to create something better, it's a starting point.
Well, and I'm joined now here in European Parliament by Dr. Jarosław Pietras, former Minister of European Affairs of Poland, and, which is quite important here tonight, co-author of Better Europe report by the Centre for International Relations in Warsaw. Welcome to the programme. But also Geneviève Pont, Vice President of Europe, Jacques Delors, it's a think tank in Brussels, based in Brussels, and Honorary Director of the European Commission from France. Welcome to the programme. Nice of you to have joined us. And Jura Majcin, defence expert at the European Policy Centre from Slovakia. Welcome to the programme to all of you. As a matter of fact, we spoke to many more people in the streets of Brussels that we could present here. But you know that what the sad conclusion is that many of them said they trusted the European Union, but they didn't trust politicians. That's a bit sad, don't you think?
I think it's not only sad, but it requires action, because what matters is whether Europe delivers things which are important for regular people. You know. I think that the support, that everyone knows that, for example, frontiers have been removed and you could travel in Schengen freely. You could do many other things like Erasmus program, or this is something which is well known. Many actions of the EU...
And it is delivered. It is delivered.
Many actions of the EU are not so much easily perceived by people that are delivered, and very often it takes very long...
Sort of invisible.
It's not visible. It is something which requires plenty of discussions. And mostly what we see is Europe debating. And I think young people would like to see Europe delivering.
Yes, on that particular point, when I was doing research for this programme, and I was reading lots of articles and essays and all the rest of it, and I came across a title, Europe at a Crossroads. I thought it was actually Ursula von der Leyen saying that, because she said something like that a couple of weeks ago or so. But then again, I checked the date, and it was 15 years ago that it was said. I think some people get, in a way, used to this alarming tone. Is this Crossroads 2025 any more dangerous or any more alarming than it was in 15 years ago?
I think we are in a very dangerous situation, actually, much more than 15 years ago.
Internally or externally?
Internally and externally. We have the situation that is well known of Mr. Trump in power. We have the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. We have the war in the Middle East.
Developing.
We can continue the list, but we have also a very worrying situation in Europe with the rise of far right in many countries of Europe. Almost no country is exempt from this rise of far right, and far right is in power.
But what they would say, well, this is democracy.
Yeah,
people
that's
trust
why
us.
Mr.
People
Trump,
don't trust politicians, but they
absolutely.
trust us.
Well, they are politicians also, but this is exactly what Mr. Trump or Mr. Vance would say. This is democracy. Well, still worrying because we need to defend ourselves, and the far-right leaders who are in power presently would not allow Europe to defend itself against Russia.
But the question, an interesting question, is referring to what Dr. Pietra said before. Why do they trust the far right? Why there's more and more trust in the far right? Do they deliver? No, they don't deliver, do they?
No.
Because they're not in power. But they promise, obviously, they promise.
No, they offer very simple solutions, whereas reality is much more complex. And the problem is that we cannot solve these complex difficulties, challenges, which are to a certain extent existential, with a very simple solution. And very often it's easy to indicate one single cause and saying, well, these migrants, this is policy of the current government, or there's something. This type of easy solutions, de facto, are difficult to implement.
Right.
And
but they sound nice. And they sound
in many cases where people of a more radical parties, I would not say only far right, but more radical, offering very simple solutions, came into power, they have been moderated by the fact that they have to cope with the real problems.
Yeah. Jura, a question to you. Of course, we're talking about the future of the European Union in sort of in good light and also in this darker side of the picture. If you have a look at it, what would be the most worrying thing for you? The internal problems that the European Union has, which have been just mentioned, or the external environment, transatlantic relations, wars in the world?
Yeah, I think, of course, the internal problems are very important because the liberal democracy, in many countries throughout Europe, depends on very tight majorities. But of course, the external problem worries me a lot. Mr. Putin, of course, I don't think he waits for us to have a safe instrument and the new 5% defense pledge fully implemented. I think for him, if he decides to attack NATO, to challenge Article 5, he'll do it. He'll do it now. He'll do it very quickly, and he'll do it in a ways that.
Do you think he will do it?
I think, but they have to think about how he will do it. And if we still think about it as a sort of a Second World War scenario with a large troops.
But when you say now or soon, what would be the time span? Would that be 5 years or 10 years? In your opinion, what would be soon?
I mean, you can just rely on what the intelligence officials across different allied countries are saying. And this is that we might expect challenging Article 5 by Russia in the horizon of 4 or 5 years. But, if you think about it, we tend to fixate on too much on these 4 or 5 years.
Yes, this is a part of this bad list on the menu, Mr. Trump or Mr. Putin. Or perhaps not. Perhaps at least some analysts said they will give us enough motivation to somehow regrow the European idea and integrate even more.
Yeah, it's a good point. And you know that Jean Monnet already said that Europe will build itself through crisis.
Constant crisis.
We are in the middle of a poly-crisis. Both internally and externally, with many threats. And the reaction is actually, and if we look at the Polish presidency, it has been very obvious during the Polish presidency, it's actually that Europe is reacting to try to defend itself. So there has been this proposal of a rearm EU program that would put 800 billion euros at the service of defense, but also, and this is really interesting, the building of a coalition of the willing. And why? Because it's good to invest into defense, but invest into defense means it will take time. And we can be obliged to react very quickly, urgently, if the US withdraw, which is not out of sight. In that case, we have to defend ourselves now. And there are some states in Europe and outside Europe which are able to defend themselves now. Poland is part of them. France is part of them. And we have a neighbor, a powerful neighbor, who is a nuclear power and a big friend of us, the UK. So the UK is coming back, and the coalition of the willing is now led by France and the UK, plus many EU countries, except from some of them, and countries outside the EU.
It might be a sort of awakening point for Europe. Rearm Europe is a concrete thing, but rearm Putin goes even more quickly. He's producing as many missiles as we are unable to intercept, as a matter of fact, at this stage. Yeah.
Can I just have a small comment on that? It's true that we have a lot of instruments now, but I don't think that counting the exercises, like the new 5% pledge or new instruments, deter. Russians know that perfectly well, but what they really know is how many tanks and troops we exercise and we put in fields. And this is very important for us to start doing it right now. This is very urgent. And unlike other crises in Europe, like migration crisis or financial crisis, this won't be solved by some, if I can say, bureaucrats in Brussels.
The only trouble that I have with whatever you said is the word urgent. Can anything happen in the European Union in that mode? Because the decision-making process just takes ages, and it doesn't sort of answer to the needs of contemporary politics.
Yeah, I mean, you are fully right. Decision-making process in Europe is heavy. However, when there is an urgency, political urgency to which everyone agrees, then decisions can happen also quickly. When we look back at, for example, financial crisis, ministers of finance and heads of state and government were sitting at the weekend, knowing that by end of weekend they have to take decisions, otherwise Monday morning markets will react. The same happened with the Greek, the same happened with even with pandemic. I think this urgency makes external danger is a huge integrating power, and it helps to take rapid decisions. In our report, we are suggesting that for some of the issues, things should be quicker and among those ready to cooperate together.
Is that not just a wishful thinking, Dr.
No, we have been proposing kind of a covenant for European security, which was based on cooperation between those willing. And now we've got coalition of willing. This we have written in the end of last year, and this year it came into realization.
That's it.
And you could do these things. You have been asking before the questions what to do with the Orban. In a coalition of willing, it doesn't really matter, because coalition of willing is those who are willing.
Who want, those who want, obviously. Exactly. Well, our regular viewers know that we sometimes use questions from other capitals of Europe, from other places in Europe. And here's a question from Leonard Nowe, a political analyst from Germany.
For years, the EU has struggled to hold member states accountable for violating core democratic principles. From Hungary's systematic hollowing out of the rule of law to Poland's previous government undermining judicial independence. And despite efforts to sharpen these mechanisms, sanctions have been sluggish, conditionality weak. Now, I would argue this credibility gap is a problem in and of itself, but it also doesn't bode well for the EU's ability to act in the future, to tackle challenges ranging from organizing security and defense to enlargement. What can be done about this? And second, isn't it time to abandon the notion that all 27 members will move forward together and instead revive old concepts such as multi-speed Europe and differentiated integration? That is, to allow for coalitions of the willing, to enable member states to move forward in certain policy areas when others are constantly stepping on the brakes.
Right, I've asked the politicians before, do we really have an idea what to do with countries, member states of the European Union, who are breaking the rules, who are ignoring the rule of law, which is also a matter of security to a large extent in Europe? I know we're talking about it, we're discussing it, we're complaining about it, but can we really practically do something about it?
I would say that not necessarily within the EU framework. I think that's why we have coalitions of the willing being formed. As Alex understood, President of Finland said we'll see Europe plus minus, so minus my home country, Slovakia,
It's a different
Hungary.
speed of European Union.
Exactly.
It basically boils down to the very, very old idea, recently refreshed.
Yeah, but also we can have countries like UK on board, like Iceland, Norway, countries that are outside are important. So, you know, you lose something, but also you gain something by this approach in security.
Yes. In the coalition of the willing, you have the UK, so for obvious reasons, we're a member of the Security Council and nuclear power, and attached to democracy and European values. But you have also big countries belonging to NATO,
like Canada,
and outside the EU, like Canada. So, in a certain manner,
who at some point wanted to become a member of the European Union.
Minus certain states, okay, two which are not ready to be with us against Russia, and two which are neutral, but plus France from the outside. So I think that the question of how to deal with these problems in the EU is an extremely complex question that will not...
You should feel it very well, because if you're from Slovakia, you know what's happening there.
Yeah, exactly.
We have the problem.
So it will not have an answer, an easy answer now. So that's why we need to do this step aside and find solutions without them.
Yes.
It may lead exactly to kind of a variable geometry. But this variable geometry is even these days. For example, there has been some members of the EU not members of Schengen, but there are some members of Schengen who are not members of the EU. So it could work also in some other places.
We're creating some sort of new kind of European Union.
That's true, that is changing the nature. However, in a new actions or in new fields, first, you could have only those who are decided to follow rules, and then you've got outside those who are not willing to really contribute. Secondly, you could establish also a bit different decision-making process, much quicker, and for example, not always based on unanimity, but somewhere in a spectrum between unanimity and qualified majority.
Could that be a remedy for, I'm sort of trying to connect two different subjects, but could that be a remedy for growing populism and radicalism?
It might be, but it requires engagement of all countries, and especially those who are leading in Europe. So we have a question of leadership in Europe. And for example, even in country of the native to the expert who was putting a question, the Constitutional Court has been very critical about taking some areas by European Court of Justice. So saying there is a problem here. And I think it should be based on much more, much bigger, much deeper support by all those who are willing to lead the European Union to a new solutions and try to push it forward. For me, the question of rule of law is also a question of having respect to not only to internal situation, but also to rule of cooperation with other countries. You cannot have European Union where rule of law is being diminished or is being not really followed.
Yeah. So you mentioned this aspect of popular opinion, and I think people crave leadership in Europe. And when we also, at APC, we often go to capitals and we discuss with think tankers, but also with policymakers who tell us that, you know, we can't talk seriously about security with our citizens because they would become paralyzed. And this is not really the
Paralyzed.
case. Exactly. That we can't talk about resilience or this booklet, you know, what to do if war hits. They would say we cannot possibly distribute this because it would scare people. But, you know, we always have a clear message. These people also read news, and they want politicians and leaders to lead them, to guide them, to show them the way.
I've got an impression that everybody is scared these days of this or another. There's so many threats inside and outside that we live in a world of constant fear. And some leaders chicken out, like Prime Minister Sanchez recently with NATO, the 5% pledge, in which he said that if spending more would be not what Spain is about. So it's not show of leadership. Yeah.
A positive word now. You know what?
Finally, Genevieve, thank you very much.
You know what? There are countries around that are looking to Europe and willing very much to be part of the EU. So enlargement is being prepared.
But is it realistic now?
Yeah,
there's a very big but.
There is a big but. We know now that we will not be able to deal with an enlarged EU if we do not reform the decision-making process.
In particular.
So we have absolutely to couple enlargement with institutional reform. Or we will be obliged to invent coalition of the willing. The coalition of the willing can transform itself into a new, let's say, community, like the monetary union.
Yes,
monetary union.
You see but when you say we need to make a reform, I go to sleep and I know that it's going to last 20 years or so, and then perhaps we'll come to some kind of conclusion when I wake up.
That's why we have to put, as I said before, if we want to solve a problem, a very important problem, in an urgent manner, then we have to...
Coalition of the willing. Forget about the European Union, it's the coalition of the willing.
To do it elsewhere than in the EU, unfortunately.
Dr. Pietras, you wanted to say something? Because I didn't leave the floor to our audience.
I want to disagree, because I think that there is great danger in linking institutional reform of the EU to the enlargement, because this can be easily exploited in a manner that will prevent any enlargement for quite a long time.
Yes.
When you look into the treaty, Lisbon Treaty was created as kind of perpetual treaty which had contained elements that would allow to develop this treaty in relation to situations. For example, we got a number of passerelle clauses. I looked into passerelle clauses which enable to change in some areas.
Right. Okay, let's just don't analyze the whole Lisbon Treaty, please.
Yeah, but it is an important element that you've got a flexibility built in.
Okay.
And secondly, you can also, you have to note that all the candidate countries together are representing less population than UK that has left. Because voting power is based on a number of inhabitants,
yes, and the population,
de facto it doesn't really make a huge complication. It could lead to change of a treaty, but not as a condition for enlargement.
Right. Okay. Now, I know we've got a very active audience, and I know there are some volunteers to ask a question. So, since we have only 9 minutes left, then who would like to ask a question? Yes, please introduce yourself and ask the question.
Hello, my name is Piotr Rodewald. My question is regarding
Where do you come from?
I'm from Poland.
Okay.
I'm a trainee here. My question is regarding the strategic autonomy and maintaining good relation, the transatlantic relations. These ideas, are they clashing with each other or maybe reinforcing each other?
Right. Transatlantic relations and
the strategic autonomy.
Autonomy, okay. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, please, you.
I think these ideas are complementary. I think we have to build the European pillar of NATO, and I understand that current situation with the Trump administration is difficult. But you know, we have to do whatever it takes to have the capabilities we need to defend ourselves with or without Washington. And you know, given the expected U.S. global posture review, we may expect some withdrawal of troops and capabilities from Europe. That's why we need to fill these gaps, and quite quickly.
Are we still allies, by the way, with the Americans?
Yeah.
Formally, yes.
I think I do not like really this strategic autonomy because it's
a French idea, by the way, isn't it?
No, but I would say it's a strategic resilience. What we need is a strategic resilience to be resilient to whatever happens, not necessarily having all the production of everything what we need in Europe. This is not possible. However, we should be resilient to any threat that comes from outside.
I hope you are satisfied with the answer, unless...
just to add something, the fact that under the insistence of Mr. Trump, we will now decide in the EU to devote 5% of our GDP to defense.
Defense and military spending, yes.
Yeah. That's positive from the point of view of strategic autonomy. So, once again, he's favoring a positive EU
positive
reaction.
change within the EU, yes. And there's another question. Yes, okay. Let me just run over there. I'm not sure that the cameras can actually catch it, but we'll try to do it. Yes.
Hello, my name is Alexandra. My question is about, because we have talked about EU initiatives, the instruments such as SAFE, REARM, about the NATO target. What else do we need to do to ensure that Europe has the capacity to defend itself? And are we right now not just throwing money at the problem?
Right, okay. The question is about realism and practical solutions. Who would like to take it up?
If I could say, sorry, if I could say only one thing, that Europe needs much more resources that are at Europe's disposal. Our budget, which is 1% of the EU GDP, is really not sufficient. However, just putting resources on issues is also not a solution. You have to have a first define what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve, and then to find money. The money should be not 1 or 2%, should be much more. De facto, many of
5% is too little.
It's
not enough.
Look, when you see carefully what EU is making, how is financing its deeds, very often this is done by national governments.
Right.
So if there is a EU legislation or EU policy or EU action, and member states have to finance it. So de facto, EU is using much more money. The problem is that member states are indebted. The EU as a whole is not yet indebted. It's embarked on the issue of getting new debts. However, there is no strategy in it. And I think here there is a problem. It should be that...
Yura and then Genevieve.
Just briefly, so what shall we do? We have a shopping list of things we have to procure that are called capability targets that have been recently agreed by defense ministers. Every country knows what they have to buy, so they should start buying it very quickly and fielding it and exercising it. That will be the most important thing.
I would say, first of all, we need to know what we want to achieve together. So have common objectives.
We want to achieve readiness by 2030.
Yeah, we must have a common strategy, a common analysis of the situation, common analysis of priorities. Then as far as funding is concerned, the REARM EU program is not about EU spendings, it's about easing the rules for member states and also about a common program, 150 billion euros of borrowing. Finally, we need to form soldiers. We need people who are able to fight on the ground. And there are some countries who do so. I think it's the case of Poland because you are so near the front. But in many member states, this is not yet the case. So we need also to train people to fight.
Right. Okay, now Denmark is taking over the presidency. So let's go for another question, this time from Copenhagen, from Denmark.
How would you work with, in this time of hybrid warfare, new technologies and social media, how will you secure that our democracies in the 27 member states are fit for purpose so that people don't feel disenfranchised? So will you consider how we collectively can have a sort of a democracy peer review so that they are fit for purpose in the future.
Right, the new technologies in terms of security, national security or security on the European continent, it's actually a big thing, really. As a security matter, are we ready, are we prepared to confront the big techs that are, in a way, part of this disinformation game that endangers Europe and European security?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you see how many strategies Europe has adopted on the matter. We have the Digital Services Act and all sorts of legislation. But I know my question is, do you feel there's less disinformation outside? I don't think so. So we must be not doing something right. So I think we should double down on implementation, on issuing fines, and also building our own tech industry.
For the moment, we seem to be quite toothless when it comes to big techs. Yes, well.
There is a danger presently.
Yeah.
You have read, I have read and heard that we may renounce to our existing regulation in the negotiation with the US on tariffs. And I hope it will not become truth and that we will continue with our DMA and DSA, which are really a good basis to try to defend ourselves.
Are the new technologies going to, maybe that's too strong a word, to destroy European integrity or democracy as a concept? I remember Anne Applebaum wrote it in one of her books that really social media can be an existential threat to democracy. Do you believe that?
I think the transformation which is provided by social media, by artificial intelligence, is going so quick that people are unable to see how far it might go and what are the repercussions. The new tools which affect the traditional democracy, voting by paper and so on, whereas you got information which is micro-targeted, practically on you, saying you should do something or showing you an example of something that you don't like. And then it is creating a new reality, which is partially virtual. I think we are not fully aware where it will go. We have to find answers, and we have to look at the moral and ethical issues of that. And I think Europe is doing well by not forgetting about this aspect. It's not about the tempo of development of artificial intelligence, but also where it will lead. We have to be aware about it.
Thanks very much for joining us tonight on the show on Capital Questions at TVP World. And it's good to remember, I have to say, that while we talk and debate, which we do, others are preparing, and it's not that difficult to see who those others may be. It seems that Europe is finally waking up, but is it not too slowly, frankly? The time for comfortable illusions is over. What's really needed now are decisions, determination, and action. Well, that's all from us tonight here at the Brussels edition of Capital Questions from the European Parliament. Until next time, from our TVP World team, goodbye. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you.